Well, thanks so much for joining me for another episode of the Friday Reporter podcast. It is so fun to me to be able to have conversations not only with journalists, but also with the people that are really behind the scenes, those that you aren't necessarily reading about, aren't necessarily seeing, but are really, really making things happen. My good friend today, Brooke Lee Smith, who is a beauty creative and just a star to so many people behind the scenes in Washington, D.C., and really all across the country. Brooke, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
So we have talked for so many different conversations about the world that you're in and the work that you do, and how even just last week for the debate, there was some criticism of Governor DeSantis for having some powder put on his face so he didn't have to look
Right.
all that
Right.
sweaty. But so much of the work you do is really to make sure that you make people look great, but you also erase distractions so people's messages can really come through. And I like to say that, especially to men who are reluctant to have makeup put on their face at all. Before we get into all of that, though, will you tell me a little bit about how you got into the work that you do today?
Yeah. I grew up in South Georgia and I grew up in a family who, like, my mom always looked put together. So hair, makeup was always flawless, wardrobe. So it was very important to us that everything was always put together.
Hmm.
So I grew up in this family and I grew up just naturally doing hair and makeup for pageants and proms, homecomings, weddings. Um, and from there, I went to hair school and I worked I had my own salon for a bit in Atlanta. And then I knew that I wanted to do TV and film. And it took me a little bit of time to get there, but I started by freelancing with CNN, and then the other networks just came. And then I got into union for film. And so that's kind of my path to where I am now. But I'm currently networking. I mean, I'm currently freelancing at multiple networks, doing film and TV series in between when I can, commercials, that sort of thing.
I mean, it's to me, you're so great at it and you're so fun to visit with. Even like you have a rotating cast of characters that sort of come into your world.
Right.
And people, they really do, they seek you out because they know you're so great at what you do. And at some point before we get done today, I want you to tell me a little bit about the book that you're writing, because I know that you're working
Yeah.
on something too. But so much of what you do is about being in front of these. I mean, politicians are, what do they say? Washington is Hollywood for the ugly people, and then the rest. Tell me, tell me if you will, a little bit about your process. I know women probably love to visit with you because you make them look even better than they already look. Is there a difference between the guys and the girls? Like, tell me give me a little flavor of what that looks like when different people arrive, because you have your own sort of, it's really your office, right? You're set up in a space at the
Right.
various networks. You're in, obviously, in a wonderful network where they have you connected into all of these different places. But tell me a little bit about what that looks like, because you're sort of in the office and people come to you, and it's not the doctor's office, but like you're going to put people back together.
Right. So men are a little bit different than women in the sense that some of them are hesitant for makeup. Um, some of them, uh, they're hesitant, they're scared, they don't want people to know they're wearing makeup, that sort of thing. Some of them are fully aware that they need makeup, and are open to it. Women, it's kind of, most of the women look forward to it. Some of them even plan events on the same day as going on TV, dinner parties, dinner dates, that sort of thing. So they tend to look towards getting it done. And of course, women's makeup's a little bit more detailed and time consuming than a man.
Sure.
Um, so there's the lashes of it all, and
Hmm.
um, you know, really focusing on the eyes, whereas the men, most of them just want powder. And honestly, 99% of them get under eye concealer and powder. But it's such a less time consuming process than the women.
Sure, sure,
Makes
sure.
sense.
But so necessary. And so
Yeah.
I mean, you're everywhere. And I want to get into a little bit of the different avenues that you're in. But for
Hmm.
politics, you are every day, you're at a different network.
Hmm.
And you're literally running your show and doing all of the things to get people to look great before they go on TV. But you also you go to the debates, You go
Mhm.
and you do a lot of that different work. Tell me a little bit about
Yeah.
how what your week looks like as that sort of over time.
Yeah. So, well, an example yesterday. So, starting, let's say that my week started yesterday. So, yesterday morning, typically Sunday mornings, I do a morning show at one of the networks. But yesterday, I did a great performance that I actually watched Saturday night at the Kennedy Center. So, I got two people ready for their show at the Kennedy Center yesterday morning. And then I ended the day at a network, just a 4 hour shift at a network in the evening. And then the rest of this week, today I'm at a network this evening. Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm at a network in the afternoons. And actually this weekend I'm flying to Louisiana for a wedding, kind of outside of the New Orleans area.
Hmm.
So that's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So um, I'll do her wedding and then I'll come back home for that. So the week is a little like that's this week. So it's a little different. Last week was the debate at Ronald Reagan Library. So I was there all week,
Uh-huh.
and then I flew back in and the next day was at a network, and then we fast forward to yesterday at the Kennedy Center. Um, yeah, so every day is one or sometimes two networks a day, sometimes a private client on the same day as a network.
Sure.
If yeah, a few weeks ago was a commercial. Next week is a commercial for a few days. So every day is a different day.
Anybody in particular that stands out as someone and a name that you can share that you particularly like to work with?
Well, so I work with so many different people
Yeah,
on a
sure.
daily on a yeah on a daily basis, and at the networks it's a little tricky because we have so many people. We have contributors, we have guests, we have the anchors, the hosts, the reporters, and there's so many great people out there that I love working with. And then I do TV and film too, so there's just there's actors,
All
there's
of
people that
that.
I've met kind of that in that arena too. Um, So I don't like it's funny with the name, like with the name dropping, because I'm like, is it okay to name drop when you freelance at the networks? Um, but I
Well,
have there
I won't put you on the spot because you are, like I said, behind the scene. You're the magic behind the
yeah.
show. So, like, also too, maybe people don't want you to share who they are. But is there a particular story, anything that stands out to you that's happened in the green room that's something you always refer back to or share with other folks like yourself that are working behind the scenes? Maybe lessons learned.
Mm, I mean, I there are funny stories with particular like with personalities,
Hmm.
I mean, everybody's a little bit different and I've seen some anchors or some hosts over the years evolve and change,
Absolutely.
like even on their like how they treat the hair and makeup, like how they treat us or kind of and I always think of there's I always try to remember, and I tell, especially people that are starting out, is that however people are, when they're in our chair, however they're reacting to us has nothing to do with us, right? Like it's whatever's going on behind the scenes in their lives.
Yeah.
And yeah. And hair and makeup tends to be something that people feel like they can control. So it tends to come out in our chair a lot of times. But, there have been people who, there's one anchor at a network who she was kind of hard on her staff and hard on the hair and makeup room and or the artist in general. And I'm getting ready to blow dry her hair and I'm standing behind her and I'm not even touching her, like not even touching her. And she starts freaking out and kind of yelling, if you will, because her hair was being pulled. And I was literally not even touching her
Huh.
at all. And
Yeah.
so there's situations like that where it's like that's a prime example of whatever's going on in her world has absolutely nothing to do with me. But
Yeah.
for the most part, there's a ton of stories. I've had people who are going on the air, who's like one guy, his daughter in the bathtub put a suction cup on her, like a suction toy on her dad's head.
Oh
And so
no.
he had a bruise on his head for a week. So he'd come into makeup every day. And it's not just putting concealer on it, right? Like I'm trying to do it properly where I'm like neutralizing the colors and then concealing it so it doesn't pop through during the day for him. So
Yeah.
there's all kinds of funny things like that that happen that we're covering up or helping with that people don't see,
Hmm.
on the other side of the camera. But you said something earlier about um distractions. And
Yeah.
I always, that's like, the biggest thing for us, especially for those going on TV, is to make sure there are no distractions. And just like you said, people can hear what you're saying and they're not focused on, you know, something, a
Your
lash falling
makeup is
off,
awry.
or yeah, yeah, or too much gloss, or too, for the guys, like we talked about, or like you mentioned earlier, like the powder with, being too shiny, like that's distracting, especially if the shine starts to look like they're sweating. Because then
Mm-hmm.
people psychologically are like, why is he sweating? Is he not speaking the truth? Like, is there something he's saying that's not honest?
Right. And
So,
we've talked so much in the past about the history of makeup, and everybody refers back to that JFK Nixon, the contrast between the two of them. One was, clean and clear and young and not sweating because
mhm.
he'd had some makeup and had some attention drawn to his appearance. Whereas President Nixon really was, he was sweating profusely. And that really was a
Yeah,
distraction from the words that he was saying out loud.
yeah.
I know you've done a ton of research on that too, and really talked to a lot of folks. Tell me a little bit about what you've uncovered over the course of time.
So it's interesting. I remember hearing, kind of when I first started in the makeup arena, I remember hearing about the debate. So that of course I go and do my own research. But over the years, and then specifically this past year, um, so many things, right? So I've read that JFK, leading up to the debate, he had spent some time at the beach, so he was nice and tan, right? So
Mm.
he's automatically going to look more youthful, and fresh. But then but recently I was told that he had, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called, but that he had a disease that caused him to be warmer in complexion,
Oh, is
which
that right?
I just found that out recently. Yeah, I had no idea. Um, and also Nixon refused makeup. So at these debates, whether it's two people or 12 people on the debate stage, there are a team of makeup artists behind the scenes, right? And our sole purpose is to make them not look distracting, to make them feel good, because if we make them feel like they look good, they're going to feel good. Their confidence is going to shine through on the stage, right? And
Yeah.
so this first debate in 1960, there was one makeup artist who was in charge, of the makeup that day. And JFK said yes, and he took her up on it. And Nixon said no, that he had it under control. And actually, Nixon was known for using his own makeup, which was a kind of what we would call like a pancake makeup, kind of a thicker consistency to cover his 5 o'clock shadow, because apparently it would always peek through. So he said that he had it under control.
Ah,
Um, so he took that into his own hands and he covered his beard area, but the powdering is the part that showed, right? Like him sweating, it was a distraction. And you may have just said this, but it was said that the people, if you listened to the debate on the radio, then you thought that Nixon won. But if you watched it, you thought JFK won the debate. And that
oh,
was all because of that sweat, and that shininess. So
yeah.
um it's interesting. But then following that debate, because I've gone down a huge rabbit hole, but following that debate, then Nixon started he did start listening, and he started having more makeup done when he went on like TV shows, morning shows, that sort of thing. He was making sure that he had full makeup done from there on out, which is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's really the moment that people point to. And I know that you've also paid really close attention. A lot of the different networks have different, maybe different standards or different sort of levels of what they look
Yeah.
for in their talent. And I
Mhm.
know Fox at least is one example that you had pointed to where they, for sure, their lashes are always part. Will you tell me? I remember some of that, but I'll botch it. You tell me a little bit more about what you've uncovered in terms of the different preferences.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've realized is, when it comes to hair and makeup, and it comes to a network's brand, right? So every network has their own branding.
Sure.
And I always use Fox as an example because you can scroll through the TV channels and you can land on Fox without even seeing the graphics, right? There's no graphics, there's no logo, and everyone knows that they've landed on Fox, either Fox News or Fox Business. And that's because the hair, the makeup, and the wardrobe is always the same and not identical, but it's still underneath kind of that same umbrella of their brand.
Sure. And that
Yeah.
was
And
that was
and
an Ailes directive, right? I mean, that was sort of his
yeah,
vision in terms of how he wanted that brand to look.
it is. And actually when I, through my research, Nixon and Ailes started working together shortly after that debate.
Oh,
And
is
from
that
what
right?
I've read, yeah, and from what I've read, Ailes was a big part in telling Nixon, like, hey, you got to start taking the makeup. You've got to start taking this seriously. And they started working together shortly after that. And he had his hand in making sure that the Nixon was more presentable when he was seen. So from a branding perspective, with hair, makeup, and wardrobe, he understood that.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so interesting to me because you can really tell the different personalities, the different brands, and
Mhm.
the different ways that they like to portray their talent. And everybody looks great. It's just a little bit
Mhm.
of a different, more shine, more brilliant colors, a little bit of something different depending on where you are.
Mhm.
Um, but you also do some great work in the entertainment space. And I know just recently you got done doing s tell me a little bit about that. What kinds of things, where would we see Brooke Lee Smith's names in the credits?
The last production that I worked on was Lioness, and it's on Paramount Plus. It
Mhm.
was filmed in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And so I day played a little bit on that, which meant like I freelance. But then by the end of the show, I finished the show out kind of full time at the end, and that was fun. Um, Prior to that, the most recent thing was Tales of the Walking Dead. I did not do the zombies, and we had a team who handled the zombies alone. So we had a special effects team that they did all the zombies.
I bet.
But
Yeah.
that was fun too, and that was an anthology. So it was every 2 weeks was a different set of cast. It was a
Mm,
lot of fun. Yeah, it was. I mean, Parker Posey and Terry Crews. I mean, there was just so many different people that were on there, so it was a lot of fun.
that is super fun.
Yeah.
Is there advice you give to people when they're in the chair, things they can be doing, like whether it's when they get there, make sure they're fresh faced, make sure that their hair is done, what kinds of things? Lots of the people that I talk to, and the guests and the not only the guests, but the audience are folks that are staff that are behind the scenes that are making sure that their bosses are ready when they arrive at the green room for whether it's hair and makeup or whatever the case may be. Um, Way back when I worked on the Hill, I used to use my compact to make sure my boss wasn't shiny, but I don't have a cosmetology degree. I don't know what I was doing. He was a guy who also was very reluctant to have makeup. Um,
Hmm.
but is there advice that you give to folks, especially staff that are behind the scenes that are sending their bosses in? What kinds of things should they be thinking about?
I think if I think the first thing is whenever they talk with the booker, whoever's booking their bosses for these shows or for these hits, is to make sure that they get hair and makeup,
Mhm.
right? To ask if it's available, to ask if they can have it, even if it's a guy. Because, like we've said so far multiple times, is that it can be distracting. So even the shine on the guys can be distracting, but it's also extremely important that their image, that their brand is consistent, right? So making sure that there's hair and makeup available for them, even if it is just powder for a guy. So making sure it's available, number one. Number two, making sure that they get there in time to receive those services, right? Um, some of us in the industry work faster than others. Some of the networks want you to have more done or require a specific look, like we've mentioned. So to make sure that they're there in time to receive those, because it is important. And as far as like a fresh face goes, a lot of times women will come in because what will happen is that bookers will say, make sure they're camera ready. And then they'll come to us for a touch up. So sometimes women like yourself do this amazing job and then we just add to it, right? And we just enhance what you've already done. There are times where people try to do it all themselves and it takes longer because we're having to take things off and put things on, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. So it's um not everybody knows how to put lashes on themselves. So women will come in and the lash is like not so great, or it's a lash that you've been wearing for a week that wasn't made to wear for a week. And so then we have to take that off and start over.
Yes.
So it's if you're told to come camera ready, I would come in with what you wear on the daily, just a clean, basic look that you wear daily, and then we can enhance that look. But if you're not comfortable with your daily look, then come in fresh face and we'll give you what we can in the time that we're given, right?
Sure. And then in terms of, because not only are you hair and makeup, your wardrobe, your image, like you're literally an image maker. What kinds of things do you think work for television, especially for, I mean, women are harder, I think, and I like to say primary colors
Mhm.
for them. But is there advice that you give to people when they're asking like, what should I wear? I know that a lot of the network, even the hosts will check in with you and say, what do you think about this? What does this look like to you?
Yeah.
There's something, any advice that you give to folks in terms of what they ought to wear?
I mean, I think it's kind of tricky because it really depends on the person, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think a blazer always works.
Yeah,
You
no, I
know?
think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think a
No
blazer
distractions.
always works. Yeah.
No distractions. Like
And
a big, bright pole something is a little bit
yep.
distracting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and also it's, if you've got on a dress or a top that you're questioning, just bring a blazer as well, because you can always throw the blazer on top and make it less distracting if needed. There's all of the old rules were like no patterns, no stripes, no patterns, nothing too busy on TV because it is distracting. Um, People have pushed that a little bit, and so people have pushed that in hair and makeup as well.
Mhm.
Like recently we've had a lot of like hairstyles that we wouldn't have seen 10 years ago on TV and makeup trends as well. But yeah, for wardrobe, I think a blazer is always great to have.
Do you think that the look has changed? Did COVID maybe change some of that, where people are more willing to wear their hair the way they naturally would, or bigger or different, or like show up without a tie on? Has that
I
changed anything at all, you think?
I don't know that it has to do with COVID as much as it has to do with women, in particular, feeling like we can do more now. Like we can
Uh-huh.
kind of push the envelope a little bit, if that makes sense.
Does make sense.
Um,
I love it.
yeah, and so and the network there's still some networks that will kind of allow people to do a little bit more, but still, kind of stay within that brand. And then
Mm,
you can see that there are some networks that there's no consistency anymore at all. And it's going to be interesting to watch, like in 10 years from now,
where we are,
how
yeah.
like how that evolves.
Well, the entry of like, little podcasts like mine where we're chatting on YouTube, or like people are online as influencers, or they're just doing their
Mhm.
TikToks. So much of that is blending with traditional media that I feel like
Mhm.
you're right. 10 years from now, it may be a whole new world, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so, and I know that you're working on the book, and I know that it's a labor of love, but I want you to tell me a little bit about your vision for it and how it's coming together.
So the book is interesting because in the past couple of weeks, it's changed a little bit too. So the book is basically on the psychology of makeup and breaking that down kind of in all worlds, right? So politically, TV and film, every day. And I do go into the history and the politics as well, and kind of what we talked about,
Mhm.
the debate, kind of digging into that world. But it has a lot to do with the psychology behind it and what impressions we're making, and consistency or lack of consistency in branding, and how that plays into all the things, whether it's TV, film, podcasts on YouTube,
Sure.
um, all it's and politics. And politics is kind of in the forefront right now because we're in this new election cycle,
Yeah.
um, which is interesting. So the book is underway, and I actually owe some pages that I've got to send in for somebody to review. But
Good.
so it's just, yeah, it feels like it's taking forever.
The one
But I've
thing,
all
as a footnote to that, the one thing I will say is that every guest I've had on the show that worked on a book, everybody's process is different. It's not linear. Some people work on it for years and years. Other
right.
people, like you're working in your space and you're not in front of a computer all day long. So you have to like come home from your day and then turn on the laptop and start to work. Some of the journalists I've talked to about the books that they've created have used their own writings, the writings that they've done over the course of their career,
Mhm.
as some of and that becomes the part of the book.
Content.
That's right. So
Yeah.
everybody's process is different, but stick with it because you're going to I can't wait to read it because I know it's going to be fascinating. I know you've done a ton of research.
Yeah, and I've recently been asked by a couple publications to write articles. So
Right.
it's like what you were saying with the people taking their content, putting in the book.
Mhm.
And so that's going to be interesting too, because I'm going to take some of the stuff that I've found from my research and write some articles and put those out there. So it'll be
Good.
fun.
Well, let us know because the Friday Reporter also promotes lots of great work that our guests have out there. So we'll make sure we share it with our listeners. Um,
Yeah.
Do you think, is there anything that stands out for you? Are there must-haves? Is there something that you, for all the girls in the room, because the guys, powder always, make sure you stop in the
Hmm.
makeup chair, ask in advance, and make sure you get there. Are there any must-haves? Like, for instance, what's your favorite mascara? I know I've asked you this before.
Oh, I love Dior Show. That's my favorite. I feel
Okay.
like longevity, it does, I go through it pretty quickly.
Mhm.
But it's my favorite. I definitely notice a difference in that. So Dior Show is a great must-have. I For women, one of my favorites that I kind of fell in love with during COVID. I used them before COVID, but then during COVID, because they were like people were putting on masks and taking masks off, were the Makeup Forever Aqua liners. So they're lip liners. And so what I started doing was during COVID was using the lip liner as, filling in the lip with the lip liner and then
Mhm.
doing a chapstick on top of it or a gloss on top of it. So I think to have a go-to kind of your brand's lip on you at all times is great. I think that lip liner is great because if you can find the color you love, it's waterproof and you can put it on, in the morning and then all day, just add a gloss or your lip balm. Um, Dior also, Dior happens to have only two products that I use and I absolutely love. The other one is the Dior, the lip glow, Dior Addict lip glow. And it's like a lip balm, but it's really creamy and it's like a chapstick, but it's like a luxurious chapstick, and it's amazing to put on top of anything. Yeah,
Love
so I
it.
would say a lip color for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I always ask because number one, I always like to share sort of tips and tricks and insider, what are you
Hmm.
using? Because if you're using it, then all of us should probably be using it.
Hmm.
Um, so any other advice you can give as we get to the end of our 30-minute conversation? Any other advice you can give to folks as they're going about their day? I mean, you obviously your daily look is one thing, and then the way
Hmm.
you go into TV is another. But is there
Hmm.
any other advice you give folks about really just about anything in terms of like making your look work for you?
Any advice? Um, I would say find what you love, right? Like accentuate whatever that is that you love about yourself. So find that favorite hairstyle or makeup look and then be consistent with it.
I love that. And I think that's so good.
Um,
So last week I had a guest on who is my friend. I've like this as we get back into the fall and we get back to into putting on our big girl clothes and going out into the world, big boy
mhm,
clothes too. But getting ourselves out into the world. Like I had a
mhm,
friend on last week who was a stylist and she gave us some good
mhm,
tips and tricks. And that is also consistent with what she said too, is like be yourself, be authentic, and be consistent
mhm,
about it, but have fun too. So, like
mhm,
to your point about people like being more willing to try different things on TV, but also to make sure that you're preparing in advance. Like, make sure you ask before you walk in. Don't be
mhm,
afraid. I think that's the other thing that I always say to folks as they are booking when they're booking themselves or their bosses on TV is make sure you ask those kinds of
mhm.
questions. And it's really good to ask that there's TV, makeup and hair
Yeah,
available because that's something that's should be on offer and makes them look great.
yeah, yeah. I did really quick. I did an interview for a magazine that was released a few weeks ago, and I was having a conversation with the woman who was being interviewed, and she was talking about how some of the networks don't. She has to do her makeup and hair a lot.
Mhm,
I was like, you should be asking for it, because people they want your interview or for, um, they want your boss's interview, right?
mm,
And so
mhm.
just ask for it because it makes a huge difference, and it
Yeah,
doesn't hurt to ask.
but I also love what you said about how it giving you confidence, right? It's just one
Hmm.
one less thing to have to worry about. Worry specifically about the words you're gonna say, less about the way you look because you know you look great.
It is one less thing. And whenever people are in my chair, I always tell them, like, if there's anything you want me to tweak, if there's anything you love or you don't love, let me know because I don't get to wear it and you do. And if you don't love it, it's going to show because
Yep.
you're going to be if your hair is bothering you, you're going to mess with your hair the whole time,
Mhm.
or some gesture with your face. If you don't love your makeup, it's going to show. So
That's right.
yeah.
One less thing to have to worry about. I love
Mhm.
that so much. BrookeLeeSmith.com is where you can find this superstar friend of mine who does amazing things. She can't even tell you all the secrets she knows because she works with so many cool and fun celebrities. But look out for her. I am dying to see the show Lioness anyway, because everyone is screaming and saying it's so great. So now I'm going to look for not only the content in the show, but I'm going to look for your name in the credits, my friend. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Brooke.
Lisa. Thank you for having
Thanks so
me.
much. Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Yep. Bye.